My brother mocked me for working 2 jobs. "You're still broke, what's the point?" he said. I said nothing, just opened my new business. A year later he begged me for work. My brother Todd never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was going nowhere. He'd roll into the house in his shiny blue sedan, waltz into Mom's kitchen with that smug little grin, and crack open a soda like he owned the world. And every time, without fail, he'd glance over at me, usually still in my work shirt, smelling like a mix of dish soap and delivery grease, and ask, "How's the broke life treating you, Logan?" I used to think he was joking. Then I realized, no, he really believed it. Back then, I was juggling 2 jobs. Mornings and afternoons behind the wheel for a delivery service, racing against time and traffic for tips. Nights hunched over a sink in the back of Marino's diner, scraping plates until my fingertips looked like prunes. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was mine. Todd? He had some cushy desk job in finance, wore ties he didn't even know how to tie himself. And every time I came home dragging my limbs behind me, he'd make a show of stretching out on the couch and asking why I didn't just get a real job. I never answered him. Not because I couldn't, but because I knew something he didn't. In my mind, I was already building something. I remember one night in particular. It was raining hard, one of those bone-soaking downpours that makes you question every decision that's led you to delivering wings and cold sodas to half-dressed college kids at midnight. I'd slipped on someone's slick driveway and landed flat on my back, marinara all over my jeans, and when I limped home, Todd was there, feet up, watching some game show. "Rough night, DoorDash?" he said without even turning his head. I didn't answer. I just went straight to my room, peeled off the soaked clothes, and stared at the ceiling while the water heater clanked in the walls. My knuckles were scraped from unloading kitchen crates at Marino's earlier. My lower back was on fire. And I was exhausted. But beneath all of that, I felt something else too, resolve. See, while Todd was laughing at me for scrubbing dishes and dodging potholes, I was saving every penny. I had a little notebook tucked in my nightstand, blue cover, frayed edges, where I kept track of every dollar that didn't go to bills. I'd read books on business during my 15-minute break at the diner, with my feet propped up on milk crates. I watched YouTube tutorials on carburetors and timing belts instead of Netflix. I was planning something that didn't look like much yet. But it was real. My dream? An auto shop. Small, honest, maybe even ugly at first. But mine. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom, not my friends, and especially not Todd. He would have just laughed harder. And he almost got in my head once. There was a Saturday. I'd worked a double, hadn't slept in 36 hours, and Todd caught me dozing at the table over a bowl of cereal. He tapped his spoon against the edge of his cup and said, "You're killing yourself and still broke, Logan. What's the point?" I looked at him, eyes stinging from fatigue, and smiled. That was the last thing I ever said to him for almost a year. 6 months later, I signed the lease. It was a rundown auto garage on the edge of town, tucked between an abandoned dry cleaner and a pawn shop that only seemed to stay open for the local gamblers. The place smelled like oil and regret, with cracked windows and a sign that had once read, "Dick's Auto," but now just said, B__A__. But I didn't care. It was mine. I drained the savings account I'd built for 3 years. Every greasy paycheck, every lousy tip, every time I said no to something fun, it all went into that little blue notebook. And now it was on the table in front of me, right next to the lease agreement. My hands were shaking when I signed it. Not from fear. From belief. This wasn't just a dream anymore. It was real. I didn't make a big deal of it. No social media posts, no ribbon-cutting ceremony. I hung up a new sign. Logan's Auto and Repair. Painted it myself in navy and white. I cleaned up the bays, installed new lifts, and brought in 2 guys I used to work with from the diner, Manny, who could fix anything with a motor, and Chris, who just needed someone to believe in him. We started with oil changes. Then brake jobs. A few transmissions. Word spread faster than I thought. People came, not because we had the fanciest tools, but because we were honest. Because we listened. All the while, Todd didn't know. I didn't invite him to the grand opening, what little of one we had. No announcement, no call. Every time he dropped by Mom's to drop off a bottle of wine and brag about quarterly bonuses, I was quietly under a car, elbow deep in grease, building a future. The irony? I used to walk past that garage as a kid. Never imagined it would be the place that changed everything. But it did. It was a Thursday afternoon when he showed up. I was tightening a serpentine belt on a Honda when I heard the chime of the front door. Didn't think much of it at first, we got walk-ins all the time. But when I wiped my hands and stepped out front, I nearly dropped the rag. Todd. Same khakis. Same smug expression, except, this time it was hollow. His eyes darted around the room like he didn't know where to land. I stood there silent, while Chris looked between us, confused. "Hey," Todd said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I didn't know this was yours." I nodded once. Said nothing. He stepped forward, awkwardly. I heard from Mom. She said you've got 2 locations now?" He laughed like it was a punchline, but it died halfway out of his throat. I stayed silent. Wiped my hands again. He cleared his throat. "So, I got laid off. The company downsized. Merged or something. They cut the entire department. It's been rough, man." There it was. The pivot. He glanced down at his shoes, then back up at me. "I'm looking for work. Anything, really. I just thought maybe you could use someone around here." I studied him. This man who used to call me a wannabe, who once told me I'd die with grease under my nails and dead on my back. This man who mocked me while I worked 2 jobs to keep a dream alive. Now he stood in my lobby, hands wringing like a school kid, asking for help. For a long moment, I didn't say a word. Just stared at him. Then I turned to Chris. "Hey, go tell Caleb in the back we've got a new hire. Make sure he gets the standard intro." Chris raised an eyebrow but nodded and walked off. Todd blinked. "Wait, seriously?" I met his eyes. "Yeah. We always need someone to clean the restrooms." His smile faltered. "And Caleb's 19. I added. "You'll be reporting to him. He runs this place when I'm not here." Todd's mouth opened, then closed. I could see the pride struggling to climb out of his throat. But he needed this. "I'll take it," he said, barely above a whisper. I turned and walked back to the garage bay. He followed. I didn't humiliate Todd. I didn't scream or drag him through the mud like he used to do to me. I didn't need to. Instead, I gave him exactly what he asked for, a job. But not the kind of job he pictured. His first week, he scrubbed oil off the bathroom floor with a toothbrush. Not as punishment, but because that was protocol for new hires who didn't know a socket wrench from a soda can. And I made sure he wore the same faded navy blue coveralls as everyone else, only his had T. Smith, sewn in crooked because I let Manny do the stitching by hand. On day 3, he asked Caleb if he could maybe get something with a little more responsibility. Caleb didn't blink. "Sure," he said. "You can take over filter inventory. Those go in the storage room out back. Alphabetized. And no, the air conditioning doesn't work back there." Todd never complained, at least not to my face. He'd show up early, mop in hand, pretending it didn't bother him. But I knew. I saw it in the way he flinched when customers ignored him. In the way he hovered when I talked to clients or my crew, hoping I'd toss him a crumb of attention. Once, Manny walked past him and muttered, "Funny how the guy who said we were losers now cleans up after us." Todd just kept wiping the glass on the front door. Eventually, I gave him more to do, tire rotations, simple inspections. But I never let him skip the chain of command. Every task went through Caleb. Every time he messed up, it was Caleb who corrected him. And Caleb didn't hold back. "You overinflated that tire," Caleb told him one afternoon. "Again. Want me to draw you a picture this time?" Todd just nodded and took the pressure gauge. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. Not out of cruelty. but because he finally understood. The grind. The dignity of labor. The humility it demanded. And the irony? The more he worked, the more he started to change. Slowly. But I wasn't ready to forgive just yet. Not until the next part. It was a slow Thursday when I decided it was time. The crew was on lunch break, Manny at his usual corner table, Caleb wolfing down a burrito while reading specs off his phone. Todd sat by himself near the supply shelves, eating a sad-looking sandwich in silence. I pulled up a chair across from him. He looked surprised. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. Just wanted to ask you something." He straightened a little, like maybe this was the moment I'd finally tell him he was doing a great job. Maybe I'd offer him a promotion, a raise, or even a seat at the table. But I didn't. "Remember last winter?" I asked. "That night I came home soaked. Fell on someone's porch." Todd blinked. I was wearing my Merino's hoodie. Smelled like onions. You were watching TV. You looked at me and said, 'You're still broke, what's the point?'" He shifted in his seat. "Logan, look, I didn't mean." I held up a hand. "Don't backpedal. You said it. Repeatedly. You made a point of it. Called me a loser. A wannabe. Remember?" Todd looked down at his sandwich. "I remember everything," I continued. "The smirks. The way you joked to Mom about how I'd probably be 40 and still folding napkins. And I remember never saying a word back." He looked up at me. His face was different now. No smugness. No pride. Just something quiet. Something worn down. "You were right about one thing," I said, standing. "I was broke. But you forgot to ask the second half of that sentence." He tilted his head. "What?" "What's the point?" I repeated. "The point, Todd, was this." I gestured around us, the bays, the sound of a power tool kicking on in the distance, the rows of tires, the lift holding a Chevy Tahoe. "My crew. My shop." I leaned in just enough to make sure he heard every word. "You're living in the point now." Then I walked off. He didn't say anything. But he didn't have to. The silence was finally his to wear. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Not in me, I'd already found my footing. But in Todd. He showed up early. Not because anyone asked him to, but because he wanted to. I'd catch him outside before the sun was up, hosing down the driveway, checking the inventory, sweeping gravel from under the tires. The kind of work you don't do unless you've started to taste your own humility. He didn't talk much anymore. Not to me, not to the crew. He just kept his head down and did the job. And still, I didn't let up. Because it wasn't just about the work. It was about remembering what it felt like to be laughed at by someone who thought your ambition was a joke. One morning, I called a staff meeting. We were opening our second location on the other side of town, twice the bays, new equipment, newer clients. I stood in front of the team in the break room and handed out a printed roster. Caleb was moving up to general manager. Manny was going to train new techs across both shops. I named a few more promotions, everyone clapped, a couple guys fist bumped. Then Todd looked at me. Nothing in his hands. "Am I?" He started, voice low. "Am I going over there?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that. But then he cleared his throat and did something I hadn't seen from him in years. He apologized. "I was a jerk, Logan," he said, loud enough for the others to hear. "For years. I thought the desk job meant something, but I didn't build anything. You did. And I was too proud to admit it." The room got quiet. Even Caleb looked surprised. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know I respect you. I mean it. It should have been enough. Maybe to someone else, it would have been. But I remembered that voice too clearly. The laughter. The words. What's the point?" So I nodded slowly and said, "We'll see if those words mean something when you're not just trying to keep a paycheck." Then I added one more task to his week. Community outreach. I told him to put on a Logan's Auto Polo and visit high schools. Talk to students. Tell them how he got here. Be honest. He looked stunned. You want me to talk about this? Yes, I said. I want you to look a room full of teenagers in the eye and tell them what it means to write people off before they've even started. Todd hesitated, then nodded. The next day, he went. And the day after that. A week later, one of the school administrators emailed me. Said Todd's story, about failure, about ego, about starting from nothing, had moved the entire room. One kid even asked him to autograph his notebook. He didn't know I saw the message. I didn't tell him. But that night, he came into my office, paused by the door, and said quietly, "Thank you? Not for the job, but for the chance." I nodded. "You're not done yet." "I know," he said. "But I'm not quitting this time." And for the first time in our lives, I believed him. 6 months after Todd started working for me, Logan's Auto was no longer just a dream that made people politely nod and then change the subject. It was a name. A name with weight behind it. 2 fully operational locations, a waiting list 3 days long, and a local business award for Best Independent Shop hanging in the front office. Customers came not just for repairs, but because they trusted us. That trust had built our empire, one wrench, one honest invoice, one late night at a time. I had a meeting with a bank rep who asked if I was thinking about franchising. I laughed at the time. But when I looked at the numbers later that night, the laughter stopped. We were more than ready. And Todd saw it. He walked the floors differently now, not like a man stuck in shame, but like someone finally learning how to move with purpose. He knew every tool, every shelf. He could quote service prices from memory and had even started helping Caleb organize workshops for young apprentices. But none of that erased what had come before. So I gave him one more test. One Saturday, I organized a Client Appreciation Day. Free inspections, discounted oil changes, and food trucks in the lot. A big local radio station showed up for coverage. We had tents, giveaways, even a kid's corner with tire-shaped bean bags. And I made Todd the face of it. I didn't ask him. I told him. "You'll be doing interviews," I said. "Representing the company." He blinked. "What should I say?" "Tell them the truth," I said. "Who you used to be. Who you work for now." He swallowed hard. "You sure that's a good idea? You want to lead? Then start by owning your past." That day, he stood in front of the mic, hands slightly trembling as the host leaned in and asked, "So how'd you end up here, Todd?" And I watched, quiet, arms crossed from the other side of the parking lot, as he told the truth. He told them how he used to laugh at his younger brother for working 2 jobs. How he used to call him a failure, a joke, a dreamer wasting time. How he had to lose everything to realize what work actually meant. Then he said something I didn't expect. "My brother didn't just build a shop. He built a second chance. For himself. For me. For anyone willing to earn it." The crowd clapped. And I stood there unmoved. Because I knew this wasn't about applause. This was about closing the loop. After the event, while we were packing up, Todd walked over to me. "You saw that?" I nodded once. "You did good." He looked away. "You think I've made up for what I said?" I was quiet for a long time. Then I answered honestly. "No. You don't make up for it. You live with it. You work beyond it." He nodded. "I can do that." That night, I drove home in the same car Todd once swore I'd never afford, a used but pristine 2020 Mustang GT, black with red stitching, the kind of car that doesn't just move, it announces. I parked it in the driveway of a house I bought 3 months ago. A house with a garage that still smells faintly of motor oil and new paint. The kind of house people used to tell me I'd never deserve. Inside, the lights were low. My dog wagged its tail. My phone buzzed. It was Caleb. "Hey boss," he texted. "Todd asked to cover my shift Monday. Said you could use the day off." I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "Let him." And I put my phone down with a small smile. That Monday, I didn't go into work. Instead, I drove out to the old neighborhood, past the corners where I used to run deliveries, past the diner where I washed dishes with sore wrists and tired eyes. Everything felt smaller now. Or maybe I had just grown. I ended up outside Mom's house. I hadn't been by in over a year, not since the business took off, not since the air between us and Todd grew thick with unspoken truths. She was home. She opened the door with a soft gasp, like she wasn't sure if I was real. "Logan," she said like a question. "Hey, Mom." She stepped aside. "It's been too long." I nodded, stepping into the same kitchen where Todd once sat with his feet up, mocking me over coffee and cold cereal. The memories were loud in here. She poured tea, because that's what she did when she didn't know what else to say. "I heard about the shop," she said. "Both of them. You really did it." I gave a small nod. She took a breath. "Todd's changed. He doesn't talk about it, but I see it. You did that, didn't you?" "No," I said. "He did that. I just gave him a mop." She smiled a little. "He told me he works for someone he respects. Took me a minute to realize he meant you." That surprised me. But not as much as what came next. "I think," she said slowly, "he's finally proud to be your brother." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. Because that word, pride, used to taste bitter. Back in the car, I stared at the wheel for a while before driving across town. Second shop. The new one. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. When I walked in, Caleb had his clipboard out, barking instructions like he was born with a wrench in his hand. Todd was under the hood of a Jeep, grease on his cheeks, hands steady. He didn't see me at first. I watched him for a moment. Watched how he talked to the rookie next to him, patient, clear, no trace of the man who once mocked a dream because he was too scared to chase one of his own. Finally, he glanced up. I didn't smile. I just raised a hand in greeting. He gave a short nod. Respectful. Earned. Later, in the break room, he sat beside me with a bottle of water. No coffee. No soda. Just something clean. "I want to pay you back," he said quietly. "You already are." "No. I mean for real. For everything." I leaned back. "Todd, there's no ledger for what you said. You don't balance it with money." He looked frustrated. "Then how?" I turned to him, serious. "You show up. You work hard. You never, ever treat anyone like they're beneath you again. You mentor the ones who remind you of me. And when the day comes that someone like you walks through that door, you be the one to believe in them first." He stared at me, eyes a little glassy. "Can you do that?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. I can." "Good. Then we're square." We sat in silence after that. A comfortable silence. Like two men who had climbed the same mountain, only one of them didn't know it was possible until the other had already paved the path. When I got up to leave, Todd said, "Hey." I turned. "Thanks for not shutting the door on me." I paused. "Everyone deserves one shot," I said. "You just used yours well." I walked out into the sunset, keys in hand, the shop behind me humming with life. For the first time, I felt it. Not just success. Closure. Months later, a local business journal asked me for an interview. They wanted to know how I built 2 shops from scratch. How I turned a lifetime of mockery into momentum. The reporter asked, "What's the biggest lesson you've learned?" I looked past her, out the window, where Todd was showing a teenager how to check brake lines. He was laughing. Grease on his collar, confidence in his voice. I turned back and said, "Sometimes, the best revenge is giving someone the chance to grow." She blinked, then smiled. I didn't add anything else. For years I said nothing. Now I speak through everything I've built. And this time, people listen.